A black couple guided their daughter through the park after a long day of work. Their 7-year-old had been skipping happily, then she suddenly froze and whispered, "He's crying." Just a few steps away was an elderly man sitting with his head down on a bench, his shoulders shaking with grief. Almost instinctively the three of them moved closer. The little girl looked up at the man and said softly, "I think you need a hug. Can I hug you?" The elderly man lifted his head, confused, stunned. In that moment none of them realized that her simple suggestion would change their lives. Before we continue, tell us what time it is and where you're watching from. Subscribe and hype, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The autumn sun hung low over Zilker Park that early November afternoon, casting long shadows across the walking paths. Marcus and Denise Thompson had just finished their shift at the community center where they both worked, Marcus as a maintenance supervisor and Denise as an activities coordinator. They'd picked up their daughter Riley from school, and now they were cutting through the park on their way to the bus stop, Riley skipping between them. At 7 years old, Riley had her father's warm brown eyes and her mother's infectious laugh. She'd inherited something else from both of them too, an ability to see people that others walked right past. "Mama, can we feed the ducks?" Riley asked, pointing toward the pond where a few mallards were gliding across the water. "Not today, baby," Denise said, checking her watch. "We need to catch the 4:15 bus or we'll miss the good deals at the grocery store." "But Mama," Riley stopped mid-sentence. Her hand slipped from her mother's grasp, and she stood perfectly still, staring at something across the path. "Riley," Marcus turned back, following his daughter's gaze. On a green-painted bench beneath a massive oak tree sat an elderly white man. He was probably in his mid-70s, dressed in clothes that had once been expensive but now showed signs of wear. A navy cardigan with a small stain on the sleeve, pressed slacks that were fraying slightly at the hem, polished shoes that were starting to crack with age. But it wasn't his clothes that had caught Riley's attention, it was the way he was crying. Not loud, dramatic crying. The quiet kind. The kind that comes from somewhere so deep that words can't reach it anymore. His shoulders shook slightly, one weathered hand pressed against his face, the other clutching something small against his chest. A photograph. Marcus placed a protective hand on Riley's shoulder, his first instinct kicking in. "Come on, baby girl, let's give the man his privacy." But Riley didn't move. She stood there, her small face creased with concern, studying the elderly man with the kind of unfiltered empathy that children possess before the world teaches them to look away from pain. "Daddy," she whispered, never taking her eyes off the man. "He's really, really sad, like when you were sad after Grandma Ruth died." Marcus felt his chest tighten. His mother had passed away 3 years ago, and there had been days when the grief had brought him to his knees. Days when he'd sat alone, trying to hold it together for his family but falling apart when no one was looking. Denise knelt beside Riley, speaking softly. "You're right, sweetheart, he does look very sad, but sometimes grown-ups need space when they're hurting." "But what if he doesn't have anybody?" Riley's voice was small but insistent. "What if he's all alone and nobody knows he needs help?" Marcus and Denise exchanged a look. One of those wordless conversations that couples who'd been together for 12 years could have in a single glance. Marcus saw the concern in his wife's face mirroring his own protective instincts, but he also saw something else. Recognition. They both knew what it felt like to need someone, and wonder if anyone would show up. When Marcus's mother had died, it had been Denise's family who'd kept them afloat, who'd brought meals and watched Riley and sat with him in silence when words felt like too much. They knew the value of showing up. "How about," Denise suggested softly, "we just check if he's okay, just to make sure he doesn't need anything." "But Riley, if he wants to be alone, we have to respect that." "Okay." Riley nodded solemnly, her face serious. The three of them approached slowly. Marcus kept a gentle hand on Riley's shoulder, ready to steer her away if necessary. The elderly man didn't notice them at first, too lost in whatever memory the photograph held. His thumb traced over the image with a tenderness that made Marcus's throat tight. Marcus cleared his throat gently. "Excuse me, sir." Before Marcus could speak again, the little girl stepped forward, just one small brave step, and said softly, her voice trembling but sure, "I think you need a hug. Can I hug you?" The man's head snapped up, startled. His eyes were red-rimmed and swollen, his face blotchy from crying. For a moment he seemed disoriented, like he'd forgotten he was in a public place. Then embarrassment flooded his features, and he quickly tried to wipe his face with his sleeve. "I'm sorry," he said automatically, his voice hoarse and raw. "I didn't mean to disturb anyone. I'll move along." He started to stand, but Marcus held up a hand. "Please sir, you're not disturbing anyone. We just wanted to make sure you were all right." The man looked at them properly for the first time. This black family standing before him, genuine concern on their faces. A couple probably in their mid-30s, both dressed in the kind of practical work clothes that spoke of long shifts and honest labor, and a small girl with neat cornrows, looking at him with eyes that held no judgment, only kindness. "That's very kind of you," he managed, his voice breaking slightly. "I'm fine, just having a difficult day." Riley stepped forward, and Marcus felt his protective instincts war with his desire to let his daughter's compassion shine through. "Are you sad because someone you love went to heaven?" "Riley," Denise started gently, but the elderly man held up a hand. "It's all right." He looked at the little girl, and something in his expression softened. The rawness remained, but there was also surprise, wonder even, that this child had seen past his embarrassment to the heart of his pain. "Yes, sweetheart, that's exactly why I'm sad." Riley tilted her head, studying him with that direct way children have. "My grandma Ruth went to heaven 3 years ago. Daddy says some days the missing comes back so strong it feels brand new. Is it like that for you?" Marcus felt his eyes burn. Those were his exact words, spoken to Riley on the anniversary of his mother's death last year. He hadn't known she'd been listening so carefully. The elderly man's face crumpled, and fresh tears spilled over. "Yes," he whispered, "it's exactly like that." Denise sat down on the bench, maintaining a respectful distance but making it clear they weren't rushing away. Marcus appreciated his wife's instinct for this, her ability to offer presence without intrusion. He guided Riley to sit between him and the stranger, a father's caution still present despite the tenderness of the moment. "I'm Denise Thompson," his wife said gently. "This is my husband Marcus and our daughter Riley." The man wiped his face again, trying to compose himself. William Patterson. "I apologize for the state I'm in. I don't usually fall apart in public places." "No apologies needed," Marcus said quietly. "Grief doesn't care much about where we are when it hits." William looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and saw understanding there. Not pity, not discomfort, but recognition. "You've lost someone." "My mother," Marcus said simply. 3 years ago, like Riley said, some days are easier than others. "And today?" William asked, something like hope in his voice. "The hope that comes from finding someone who understands. Today's an easier day. But I remember the hard ones. I remember them real well." William nodded, and for a moment they sat in shared silence. The kind of silence that only exists between people who've walked through the valley of loss and understand that sometimes words aren't necessary. Riley, who'd been watching this exchange with serious eyes, spoke up. "Can I see the picture?" William hesitated, his hand instinctively tightening around the photograph. It was private, precious. But something about this child's gentle directness made him want to share it. He held it out, and Riley leaned in to look. The photograph showed William, maybe 10 or 15 years younger, standing next to a beautiful woman with silver hair and a smile that radiated warmth. They were standing in front of a Christmas tree, his arm around her shoulders, both of them laughing at something outside the frame. The love between them was so evident, it practically shone off the photograph. "She's really pretty," Riley said. "She has kind eyes, like Mrs. Patterson from school who gives me extra cookies." "Her name was Catherine," William said, his voice steadier now. "She was my wife, was." Riley picked up on the past tense immediately. "She passed away 8 months ago. Pancreatic illness. It happened so fast." William touched the photograph gently, like it might disintegrate if he pressed too hard. "1 month she was fine, laughing, planning a trip to visit our son. The next month she was gone. We didn't even have time to say all the things we needed to say." "I'm so sorry," Denise said, and the genuine sorrow in her voice made William's eyes fill again. "Today would have been our 53rd wedding anniversary," he continued, the words spilling out like he'd been holding them in for too long and couldn't contain them anymore. 53 years. We met in college. She was studying to be a teacher, and I was pre-law. She thought I was arrogant. He laughed, a broken sound. She was right, but she saw past it somehow. Saw something in me worth loving. What was she like? Riley asked, scooting a little closer. The question seemed to surprise William. In the 8 months since Catherine's death, people had offered condolences, sent cards, told him to let them know if he needed anything. But nobody had asked him to talk about her, to remember her as she'd been when she was alive, not just as the person he'd lost. She was extraordinary, he said, and as he spoke his voice grew stronger. She taught elementary school for 35 years, 4th grade. She used to say that 4th grade was the perfect age because kids were old enough to have real conversations, but young enough to still believe in magic. Riley grinned. I'm in 2nd grade, but my teacher says I read like a 4th grader. Catherine would have loved you, William said, and meant it. She had a gift for seeing potential in children. Every Christmas, former students would come back to visit her. Some of them were in their 40s, with children of their own, but they'd still stop by to see Mrs. Patterson. She remembered every single one of them, their names, their favorite subjects, what they'd struggled with. She sounds wonderful, Denise said softly. She was the best person I knew. William's jaw tightened as he fought back another wave of tears. And I don't know how to do this without her. How to wake up in the morning. How to make coffee for 1 instead of 2. How to exist in a house that feels too big and too quiet and too empty. Marcus understood that emptiness. After his mother died, their house had felt wrong for months. The silence where her voice should have been. The empty chair at Sunday dinners. The phone not ringing at 8 o'clock every Wednesday when she'd call to check on Riley. Do you have family? Denise asked gently. Children. Someone checking on you. We have a son. David, he's 48, lives in Dallas. He runs a commercial real estate development company. William's voice was careful, measured. He's very successful, very busy. Marcus heard what William wasn't saying in the spaces between his words. But he's not around much. He has his own life, William said quickly, defensively. His career demands a lot of his time. He calls every Sunday to check on me. He's a good son. I'm sure he is, Marcus said carefully, but checking in and being present, those aren't always the same thing. William looked down at his hands, at the photograph he still held. He flew in for Catherine's funeral, stayed 3 days, handled all the arrangements, made sure I had everything I needed. He sends me money every month, more than I need. He's doing his best. But you're lonely, Riley said with characteristic directness. William's face crumpled again. Yes, he whispered. I'm very lonely. They sat with that admission for a moment. The late afternoon sun filtered through the oak leaves above them, casting dappled shadows across the bench. Around them the park was busy with joggers and dog walkers and other families enjoying the mild November weather. Normal people having normal days, unaware of the small moment of human connection happening on this particular bench. Mr. Patterson, Denise said, making a decision. I know we just met, and this might sound strange, but would you like to get a cup of coffee with us? There's a shop just across the street, our treat. William looked startled. Oh, I couldn't impose. You have your own lives, your own plans. The grocery store will still be there in an hour, Marcus said with a small smile. And Riley's right, you shouldn't be alone when you're this sad. Nobody should. Please, Mr. Patterson. Riley looked up at him with those earnest brown eyes. My daddy says coffee and conversation make sad days a little lighter. Despite everything, William found himself smiling. Your daddy sounds like a wise man. He is, Riley said matter-of-factly. He's the smartest daddy in the whole world, except when he tries to help with my math homework. Then Mama has to fix it. That surprised a genuine laugh out of William, his first in longer than he could remember. Marcus grinned. She's not wrong. Numbers and I have a complicated relationship. Then it's settled, Denise said, standing. Coffee it is. William hesitated one more moment. Years of propriety and independence warring with the desperate need for human connection. The need won. All right, thank you. I'd like that very much. The coffee shop was small and warm, the kind of neighborhood place where the barista knew regulars by name. They found a table in the corner, and Marcus insisted on buying. William tried to protest, but Marcus waved him off. Mr. Patterson, I've got this. You can get the next round. The implication that there would be a next round, that this wasn't just a one-time gesture, made William's throat tight. As they waited for their drinks, Riley pulled out a coloring book and crayons from her backpack. Do you want to color with me, Mr. Patterson? I have an extra page with butterflies. I'm not much of an artist, William admitted. That's okay. Butterflies don't have to be perfect. They just have to be colorful. She pushed the paper and crayons across the table. For the next hour, they talked. Not about grief, though it hovered at the edges, but about life. Marcus told stories about the community center, about the programs they ran for neighborhood kids, about the elderly man who came every day to play chess with anyone who'd challenge him. Denise talked about the book club she was trying to start, about her dream of eventually getting her master's degree in social work. Riley colored, and occasionally interjected with observations about school. Her best friend Maya, the stray cat that kept showing up in their yard, that she desperately wanted to adopt. And William talked about Catherine. The stories came slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. How she'd burned dinner at least once a week, but refused to give up trying new recipes. How she'd collected ceramic owls, hundreds of them, displayed on shelves throughout their house. How she'd cried during every Disney movie, even the happy parts. How she'd sung off-key in the shower every morning, terrible renditions of 60s songs that made him laugh. She sounds like she was really special, Denise said. She was my whole world, William said simply. I keep thinking I'll wake up and this will have been a nightmare. That I'll roll over and she'll be there, complaining about my cold feet touching her legs. But every morning, the bed is empty. The house is quiet, and I have to remember all over again that she's gone. Marcus reached across the table and gripped William's shoulder, not saying anything, just offering the weight of human contact. William covered Marcus's hand with his own, holding on like a drowning man. When they finally left the coffee shop, the sun was setting. Denise wrote their phone number on a napkin and pressed it into William's hand. I mean this sincerely. If you need anything, call us. If you're having a hard day and need someone to talk to, call us, okay? William looked at the napkin, at the 10 digits that represented a lifeline he hadn't known he needed. I don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden, Marcus said firmly. You're a human being who's going through something incredibly difficult, and sometimes we all need people to lean on. My daddy says that's what humans are supposed to do, Riley added, taking William's hand. Help each other, be kind, make the sad smaller by sharing it. William knelt down to Riley's level, looking at this remarkable child who'd seen a crying stranger and decided he needed help. You're very wise for 7 years old. I'm almost 7.5, Riley corrected seriously. My apologies. William smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. You're very wise for 7.5. As they parted ways, William walking toward his car, and the Thompson family heading to the bus stop, Marcus called out, Mr. Patterson. William turned back. We mean it about calling. Don't be a stranger, okay? William nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He watched them walk away, Riley skipping between her parents, and felt something he hadn't felt in 8 months, a tiny flicker of hope. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, he could survive this after all. 3 days passed before William gathered the courage to call. He'd picked up the phone a dozen times, dialed half the number, then hung up. What would he say? Why would this busy family with their own struggles want to hear from a lonely old man? But on the 4th day, a particularly difficult morning, when he'd woken from a dream about Catherine so vivid he could smell her perfume, he dialed the full number. Denise answered on the 3rd ring. Hello, Mrs. Thompson, it's William Patterson, from the park. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. Mr. Patterson. Of course I remember, and please call me Denise. How are you doing? The genuine warmth in her voice made William's eyes burn. I've had better days. I hope I'm not bothering you. You're not bothering me at all. I'm actually just finishing up some paperwork at the community center. Marcus is here too, working on fixing one of the heaters before it gets really cold. Are you okay? William opened his mouth to say he was fine, to offer some polite excuse for calling, and then hang up. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the memory of Riley's earnest face asking if he was sad. Maybe it was the desperate need for human connection. Maybe it was just exhaustion from pretending he was okay when he wasn't. No, he said quietly. I'm not okay. Today is hard, and I'm sitting in my house talking to myself, and I thought maybe it would help to hear a friendly voice. I'm glad you called, Denise said firmly, and I'm going to do something that might seem forward, but I'm doing it anyway. "We're having a potluck at the community center this Friday night. Nothing fancy, just neighbors bringing dishes and eating together. Would you like to come? And before you say you don't want to impose, I'm not taking no for an answer." William felt himself smiling despite the heaviness in his chest. "You're very persistent, Denise. It's one of my better qualities. So what do you say? Friday at 6. William thought about saying no, about retreating back into his isolation, his grief, his empty house, but he also thought about how good it had felt to sit in that coffee shop, to talk about Catherine, to color butterflies with a 7-year-old girl who didn't treat him like he was fragile or broken. "I'd like that," he said. "What should I bring?" "Just yourself, though if you want to bring something Catherine taught 4th grade, right? Did she have any favorite recipes, something you could make in her honor?" The suggestion hit William like a physical blow, but in a good way. A way that made him remember Catherine standing in their kitchen, flour on her nose, laughing as she tried to salvage another cooking disaster. "She made these cookies," he said slowly. "Chocolate chip with walnuts. They were the only thing she could bake without burning. She'd make them for her students every Christmas. I have the recipe. I could try." "That sounds perfect. We'll see you Friday at 6. The community center is on Riverside Drive, big brick building. You can't miss it." After he hung up, William sat for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then he got up, went to the kitchen, and started pulling out ingredients. The recipe was in Catherine's handwriting, stained and worn from decades of use. His hands shook as he measured flour and sugar, and he had to stop twice to wipe his eyes, but he baked the cookies, and when they came out of the oven, golden brown, and smelling exactly like Christmas mornings with Catherine, he sat at the kitchen table and cried. Not the desperate, drowning tears of the park bench, but the gentler tears of remembering someone loved, of honoring them by continuing their traditions. Friday evening arrived cool and crisp, perfect November weather. William dressed carefully, changing his shirt 3 times before settling on a simple button-down. He packed the cookies in a container that Catherine had used for decades, and drove to the community center with his heart hammering. The parking lot was full of older cars and trucks. Inside, the main room had been transformed. Long tables were set up cafeteria style, covered with mismatched tablecloths. People milled around, setting out dishes, greeting each other with easy familiarity. The air smelled like fried chicken and cornbread, and something sweet. William stood in the doorway, suddenly feeling out of place. This was a community, and he was an outsider. Maybe this had been a mistake. "Mr. Patterson." Riley's voice cut through his anxiety. She came running across the room, weaving between adults, and launched herself at him, with the confidence of a child who decided they were friends. "You came. Did you bring the cookies? Mama told me about the cookies." "I did," William said, holding up the container. "Though I can't guarantee they're as good as your mom remembered. I'm a bit out of practice. I bet they're perfect." Riley grabbed his free hand, and started pulling him into the room. "Come on, you have to meet everyone." For the next 20 minutes, Riley introduced William to what seemed like half the neighborhood. Mrs. Chen, who ran the community garden. Mr. Jackson, who taught free guitar lessons to kids every Saturday. The Martinez family with their 4 rambunctious children. Miss Dorothy, 92 years old and sharp as a tack, who welcomed William with a hug that belied her tiny frame. Marcus and Denise found him surrounded by people, Riley still attached to his hand like a barnacle. "I see Riley's been giving you the full tour," Marcus said with a grin, shaking William's hand. "She's been very thorough," William said, and realized he was smiling, actually smiling. "Riley baby, let Mr. Patterson breathe," Denise said, gently extracting her daughter's hand from William's. "Go help set the table." "But I'm helping Mr. Patterson meet people, and you did great. Now go help with the table." Riley sighed dramatically but obeyed, skipping off toward the tables. "She's something else," William said, watching her go. "That's one way to put it," Marcus said with obvious pride. "How you doing, William?" "Really?" William considered the question. "Better than I was 4 days ago when I called. Thank you for inviting me, for including me. That's what we do here," Denise said simply. "We take care of each other." The meal was chaotic and loud and wonderful. William found himself seated between Miss Dorothy and Mr. Jackson, both of whom had lost spouses, and shared their own stories of grief and survival. The cookies he'd made were a hit, and 3 different people asked for the recipe. After dinner, as people cleared tables and children ran around playing tag, Riley came and sat next to William. "Did you have fun?" she asked. "I did. Thank you for introducing me to everyone. They're nice, right? That's why I love coming here. Everyone's like family." William thought about his own life, the big house in the quiet suburb where he rarely saw his neighbors, the isolation he'd fallen into after Catherine died, the way he'd let himself become invisible. "You're lucky to have this," he said. "You have it too now," Riley said, matter-of-factly. "You're part of it. That's how it works. You show up, your family." Out of the mouths of babes, William thought. She made it sound so simple, and maybe it was. Over the next 2 weeks, William became a regular fixture at the community center. He started showing up on Tuesday afternoons when Marcus was working, just to have someone to talk to. He volunteered to help with the after-school program, reading to younger kids while they waited for their parents to pick them up. He met the Thompsons for coffee twice more, once with the whole family, once just with Marcus when Denise had a late shift. They talked about everything and nothing. Sports, politics, family, loss. Marcus told him more about his mother, about the stroke that had taken her suddenly, about the guilt he still carried for things left unsaid. William opened up about the arguments he and David had been having for years, about how his son had wanted them to move to Dallas, to downsize, to simplify their lives, about how Catherine had refused, loving their home and her teaching job too much to leave, about how after she died, David had pushed again, and William had pushed back, wanting to stay in the place where he could still feel Catherine's presence. "The thing is," William admitted one afternoon, over coffee, "I think David was right. This house is too big for one person. Too many memories, too many empty rooms, but leaving feels like losing her all over again." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "My mama used to say that the people we love aren't in places, they're in here." He tapped his chest. "You could move to the moon, and you'd still carry Catherine with you. The question is, what helps you live instead of just exist? If staying in that house keeps you frozen in grief, maybe it's time to consider something different." "I wouldn't even know where to start." "That's what friends are for," Marcus said, "to help you figure it out." 2.5 weeks after that first encounter in the park, Denise called William. "Hey William, I have a question for you, and I want you to really think about it before you answer." "Okay," William said, intrigued. "Thanksgiving is next week. Do you have plans?" William's chest tightened. He'd been dreading Thanksgiving. Last year, Catherine had been in the hospital, too sick to come home, but still alive, still able to squeeze his hand. This year, he'd be alone.
"David usually calls," he said carefully. "We'll talk on the phone." "That's not what I asked. Do you have plans? Will you be with people?" "No," William admitted quietly. "I'll be home alone." "Not anymore. You're coming to our house for Thanksgiving dinner. And before you argue, let me be clear. This is not charity. This is not pity. This is us wanting you there because you're our friend and nobody should be alone on Thanksgiving, especially not when they're grieving. Okay?" William felt tears prickling his eyes. "Denise, I can't impose on your family holiday." "You're not imposing, you're accepting an invitation." "Marcus already said yes when I told him I was calling you. Riley's been asking every day when you're coming over. We want you there, William." "I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Say you'll be there at 3 o'clock. Say you'll help Marcus attempt to make cornbread dressing even though he burns it every year. Say you'll judge the annual Thompson family pie contest between me and Riley. Say yes." Despite everything, William laughed. "You're not going to take no for an answer, are you?" "Not even a little bit." "Then yes. Yes, I'd be honored to join you for Thanksgiving." "Perfect. I'll text you our address. And William, I'm really glad we met you." After they hung up, William sat holding the phone, overwhelmed by gratitude and something else. Something that felt dangerously close to joy. He called David that evening, something he rarely did outside their regular Sunday calls. "Dad, is everything okay?" David's voice was tinged with worry. "Everything's fine, better than fine actually. I wanted to tell you about some people I met. A family, the Thompsons." "Okay," David said slowly. "Who are they?" William told him the whole story. The crying on the bench, Riley's kindness, the coffee shop, the community center, the Thanksgiving invitation. He could hear the surprise in David's silence. "Let me get this straight," David said finally. "You met a random family in a park and now you're going to their house for Thanksgiving.
They're not random anymore. They're friends. Dad, are you sure this is safe? You don't really know these people. William felt a flash of irritation. I know them better than I know most of my neighbors. They've shown me more kindness in 2 weeks than I've experienced in 8 months. I didn't mean. David paused, clearly choosing his words carefully. I'm glad you're getting out, meeting people. I've been worried about you. I just want to make sure you're being careful. I'm 74 years old, David. I think I can judge character well enough by now. These are good people, the kind your mother would have loved. The mention of Catherine made David go quiet. I wish I could be there for Thanksgiving, he said finally. But I have this deal closing, and the investors are flying in from Singapore, and I can't. It's fine. William said, but they both knew it wasn't. You have your life. I understand. Maybe Christmas. I could probably make Christmas work, maybe. William echoed, not believing it. They'd had this conversation before. David's intentions were always good. His follow-through was lacking. After they hung up, William sat in his quiet house and thought about the difference between the two conversations. Denise's invitation had been full of warmth and insistence, making him feel wanted. David's call had been full of apologies and explanations, making him feel like an obligation. He pushed the thought away. David was doing his best. It wasn't his fault that his best didn't feel like enough. Thanksgiving morning dawned clear and cold, unusual for Austin. William woke early, as he always did, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. 53 years ago today, he'd married Catherine in a small church in East Texas. 53 years of waking up next to her, of shared coffee and arguments and laughter and life. He let himself cry for a few minutes, the tears soaking into his pillow. Then he got up, showered, and got dressed. He had somewhere to be, people who were expecting him. The thought was enough to get him moving. He'd spent the previous day making Catherine's famous chocolate chip walnut cookies, the ones she'd made for her students every Christmas. He'd also bought flowers at the grocery store, nice ones, because showing up empty-handed didn't sit right with him. The Thompson house was in the Dove Springs neighborhood, a working-class area southeast of downtown. The houses were small but well-maintained, many decorated with the kind of creative touches that spoke of love rather than money. Hand-painted garden gnomes, carefully tended flower beds, chain-link fences with climbing roses. The Thompson house was a modest 2-bedroom bungalow with pale yellow siding and white trim. The paint was peeling slightly around the window frames, and the chain-link fence needed repair in spots. But there were flower boxes on the porch filled with fall mums, and a hand-painted welcome sign on the door that looked like Riley's artwork. William pulled up at 2:45, 15 minutes early. He sat in his car for a moment, suddenly nervous. What if this was a mistake? What if he was intruding on their family time? Before he could spiral too far into doubt, the front door flew open and Riley came running out, not even wearing shoes. "Mr. Patterson, you're here." She ran right up to his car window, bouncing with excitement. "Come on, come in. Daddy's trying not to burn the rolls and Mama says you have to save them." William couldn't help but laugh. He grabbed the flowers and cookies and let Riley pull him toward the house. Marcus appeared in the doorway, wearing an apron that said "Kiss the Cook" and holding a dish towel. "William, welcome. And Riley, shoes. How many times have I told you about shoes?" "But Daddy, I saw Mr. Patterson and I got excited with shoes on." "Go." Riley sighed dramatically but ran inside to get her shoes. Marcus shook William's hand, then pulled him into a quick hug. "Glad you're here, man. We need all hands on deck. Denise has me on roll duty, and you know how that usually ends." Inside, the house smelled incredible. Turkey roasting, sweet potatoes baking, something with cinnamon. The space was small but welcoming, every surface covered with the kind of lived-in clutter that made a house a home. Riley's drawings on the refrigerator, photos on every wall, a basket of folded laundry on the couch, waiting to be put away. Denise emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She looked tired but happy, her hair pulled back in a head wrap, a smudge of flour on her cheek. "William, perfect timing. I need someone to taste test the sweet potato casserole and tell me if it needs more marshmallows." Marcus always says no, but I think he's wrong. "It definitely needs more marshmallows," Marcus called from the kitchen. "See, this is why I love you," Denise said, kissing her husband's cheek as she passed. William was given a spoon and led to the kitchen where no less than 6 different dishes were in various stages of preparation. The kitchen was tiny, barely big enough for 2 people, but somehow all three of them plus Riley were moving around each other in an orchestrated dance. "More marshmallows," William declared after tasting the casserole. "Definitely more marshmallows." "I knew I liked you," Denise said with a grin. For the next hour, William was put to work, peeling potatoes, stirring gravy, and yes, monitoring the rolls to make sure Marcus didn't burn them. Riley appointed herself his assistant, chattering non-stop about her school play, her best friend Maya's new puppy, and whether Mr. Patterson thought Santa was already making his list. Around 3:30, there was a knock at the door. The Johnsons arrived, the elderly couple from next door. Mrs. Johnson brought her famous pecan pie, and Mr. Johnson brought his harmonica, just in case there's call for music later. They welcomed William warmly, and Mrs. Johnson immediately enlisted him to help her whip cream for the pie, because Marcus puts in too much sugar, and Denise doesn't put in enough. By 4 o'clock, they were all gathered around the small dining table that had been extended with a folding card table to accommodate everyone. The spread was impressive, a golden brown turkey that Marcus had actually managed not to overcook, mashed potatoes and gravy, green beans with bacon, cornbread, dressing that only had a few crispy edges, sweet potato casserole with extra marshmallows, cranberry sauce from a can because that's the only way it tastes right, according to Riley, and fresh rolls that bore only minimal evidence of Marcus's supervision. They held hands around the table, and Marcus said grace. "Lord, thank you for this food, for the hands that prepared it, and for the people gathered here to share it. Thank you for family, both the kind we're born into, and the kind we choose. Thank you for new friendships and second chances. Thank you for reminding us that we're not alone, even when we feel like we are." "Amen, amen," everyone echoed. "Now," Denise said, "before we eat we're going around the table to say what we're thankful for. I'll start. I'm thankful for a roof over our heads, food on our table, and the ability to share both with people we love." Marcus went next. "I'm thankful for my family, for good health, and for reminders that kindness is never wasted." Riley practically vibrated with excitement for her turn. "I'm thankful for my teacher Mrs. Chen, who's really nice, for my best friend Maya, for my mama and daddy who love me so much, and for Mr. Patterson coming to our house, because everyone should have somewhere to go on Thanksgiving." Mrs. Johnson dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. "I'm thankful for neighbors who feel like family, for 43 years with this man beside me." She squeezed her husband's hand, "and for young people who still understand what community means." Mr. Johnson cleared his throat. "I'm thankful for this beautiful spread, for my wife's pecan pie which gets better every year, and for folks who remember that doors should swing both ways. We help each other." Then it was William's turn. Everyone looked at him expectantly. He sat there for a moment, looking around the table at these people who'd welcomed him without hesitation. This family, who clearly didn't have money to spare but had spared it anyway. This little girl who'd seen a crying stranger and decided he needed help. His voice shook when he spoke. "I'm thankful for 53 years with my Catherine, for the life we built together, the love we shared, the memories I'll carry until the day I die." He paused, gathering himself. "And I'm thankful for the reminder that even in the darkest grief, there are still people who shine light." 3 weeks ago, I was sitting on a bench in Zilker Park, completely lost, wondering if anything would ever feel worth it again. And a 7-year-old girl walked up to me and asked if I was sad because someone I loved went to heaven. She saw me when I felt invisible. She and her parents treated me with kindness I didn't deserve, and definitely didn't expect. William's eyes were wet now, but he didn't wipe them. "You've given me something I didn't think I'd feel again. Hope, connection, a reason to get up in the morning beyond just habit. So I'm thankful for new friends who've become family. For this meal, this home, this day. For all of you." There wasn't a dry eye at the table. Riley got up from her chair and came around to hug William, wrapping her small arms around his neck. "See?" she whispered. "I told you the lights would come back on." They ate and talked and laughed. William told stories about Catherine, her love of teaching, her terrible singing voice, her collection of ceramic owls. The Thompsons and Johnsons listened with genuine interest, asking questions, sharing their own stories of loss and love. Marcus noticed that William's plate was nearly empty. "William, please have more. We've got plenty, and I'm going to be eating turkey sandwiches for a week anyway." "This is delicious," William said, accepting another helping of dressing. "Catherine was the cook in our house. I'm afraid I've been living on frozen dinners and takeout since she passed." This is the first real home-cooked meal I've had in months. That won't do at all, Denise declared. William, I'm making a standing invitation. Sunday dinners, here, every week. We eat at 5. You're welcome anytime. No RSVP needed. Just show up. I couldn't possibly. Yes, you could, Marcus said firmly. Denise makes enough to feed an army anyway. And honestly, it would be nice to have another adult around who appreciates her cooking. Riley's going through a phase where she thinks everything needs ketchup. Not everything, Riley protested. Just most things. William felt his throat tighten. You don't know how much that means to me. We know exactly how much it means, Denise said gently. That's why we're offering. After dinner, Riley convinced William to help her with a puzzle on the living room floor while the adults cleaned up. As they worked on fitting together pieces of a farmyard scene, Riley chatted about everything and nothing. Mr. Patterson, do you have any grandkids? No, sweetie, David, that's my son. He never married. He's very focused on his career. That's sad. Everyone should have kids. Kids are fun. You certainly are, William agreed, finding an edge piece. What do you want to be when you grow up? A teacher, like my grandma Ruth was, and like Mrs. Patterson was. She looked up at him with solemn eyes. I think teachers are really important because they help turn on lights in people's heads. William smiled. Catherine would have loved you. She always said the best teachers were the ones who loved learning as much as teaching. Was your son a good student? He was very driven, always wanted to be the best at everything. Good grades, top of his class, full scholarship to business school. But is he happy? Riley asked with the directness only children possess. William paused, considering the question. Was David happy? He was successful, certainly. Wealthy, respected, running a company worth millions. But happy? I don't know, William admitted. I think he's satisfied with his accomplishments. Whether that's the same as happy, I couldn't say. My daddy says being good at things doesn't matter if you forget to be good to people. Your daddy is very wise. They worked on the puzzle in companionable silence for a while. William found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in months. The warmth of the house, the sound of laughter from the kitchen, the simple pleasure of fitting puzzle pieces together with a child who accepted him without question. When it was time to go home, around 8 o'clock, William hugged everyone goodbye. Riley made him promise to come back for Sunday dinner. I promise, he said, and meant it. As he drove home through the quiet Austin streets, William thought about the day, about how different it had been from what he'd expected. He'd anticipated sadness, loneliness, the sharp ache of Catherine's absence, and yes, he'd felt those things, but he'd also felt something else: gratitude, connection, the warmth of being included. For the first time since Catherine died, he went to bed feeling not quite so alone. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, on a cold December evening, everything changed. William had fallen into a comfortable routine with the Thompsons, Sunday dinners without fail, Tuesday afternoons at the community center, reading to kids, Wednesday coffee dates with Marcus when their schedules aligned. Riley had started calling him Mr. William instead of Mr. Patterson, and she'd informed him that this was because they were friends now, and friends used first names. That particular Tuesday, William had spent the afternoon at the community center as usual. He'd read Charlotte's Web to a group of second graders, answered Riley's million questions about spiders, and helped Marcus fix a wobbly bookshelf. He'd driven home around 6, feeling good. Tired, but the good kind of tired that comes from a day well spent. He'd heated up some leftovers that Denise had sent home with him the previous Sunday, watched the news, and settled into his armchair to read. That's when the pain started. It began as a tightness in his chest, uncomfortable but not alarming. Probably just heartburn from eating too quickly. He got up to get some antacid from the bathroom. Walking down the hall, the tightness intensified. His chest felt compressed like someone had wrapped a band around it, and was pulling tight. His left arm began to ache. William made it to the bathroom, and gripped the sink, staring at his reflection in the mirror. His face was pale, sweaty, his breathing had become labored. This wasn't heartburn. He fumbled for his phone, fingers clumsy. He should call 911. That's what you were supposed to do. But some stubborn part of him, the part that had been independent his whole life, resisted. He didn't want to bother anyone, didn't want to be a burden. Instead, his fingers found Marcus's number. He pressed call. Marcus answered on the second ring. Hey William, what's up, Marcus? William managed his voice tight. I think I need help, William. What's wrong? Talk to me. Chest pain. Can't breathe well. Left arm hurts. Where are you? Are you home? Yes, home. Stay on the line with me. Denise is calling 911 right now. Don't hang up. You hear me? Don't hang up. William slid down to sit on the bathroom floor, the phone pressed to his ear. Marcus's voice was a lifeline, calm and steady, talking him through it. Ambulance is on the way. They'll be there in less than 10 minutes. Just keep breathing. In and out. You're doing great. Marcus, I'm scared. I know, man. I know, but you're not alone. Okay, we're coming. As soon as the ambulance gets you, we're heading to the hospital. You're not alone. The next hour was a blur. Paramedics arriving, assessment, the ambulance ride with sirens wailing, the emergency room with its harsh fluorescent lights and constant beeping, doctors asking questions he could barely focus on, tests, so many tests. The diagnosis came around midnight. Not a heart attack, thank God, but a severe angina episode triggered by dangerously high blood pressure and acute stress response. His heart was under tremendous strain, and if he didn't make changes immediately, a real heart attack was inevitable. Mr. Patterson, the cardiologist said, a kind-faced woman in her 40s, your body is telling you something important. You're not managing your stress, your blood pressure is through the roof, and your grief is taking a physical toll. You need medication, lifestyle changes, and honestly, you need support. Do you have family who can help you? My son lives in Dallas, William said, his voice hoarse. Anyone local? William thought about saying no, about maintaining the fiction that he was fine on his own. But then he remembered Marcus's voice on the phone, calm and steady. Remembered Denise calling 911. Remembered Riley's insistence that everyone needs people to help turn on the lights. Yes, he said, I have friends. Those friends were in the waiting room. Marcus and Denise, even though it was after midnight, and they both had to work in the morning. They'd left Riley with Mrs. Johnson, and driven straight to the hospital. When William was finally allowed visitors, Marcus walked into the room, and William promptly started crying. Hey, Marcus said gently, pulling a chair up to the bed. You're okay. The doctor said you're going to be okay. I'm sorry, William managed. I'm sorry I called you. I didn't know who else. Don't apologize. I'm glad you called. That's what friends do. We show up. Denise appeared with coffee from the cafeteria, strong and terrible but caffeinated. She handed one to Marcus, and sipped her own, settling into the other chair. William, I'm going to say something, and I need you to really hear me, she said. You can't keep living like this, alone in that big house, isolated, trying to handle grief by yourself. It's literally killing you. I don't know what else to do, William said helplessly. You let people help you, Marcus said firmly. You stop pretending you're fine when you're not. You call your son, and tell him what's happening. You accept support. You let us in. I don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden, Denise said, her voice gentle but firm. You're a human being going through something incredibly difficult, and we care about you. We want to help, but you have to let us. William looked at them. These two people who'd known him for barely a month, but had dropped everything to rush to the hospital in the middle of the night, who were looking at him now, with genuine concern and affection. Okay, he whispered. Okay. Marcus stayed the rest of the night, dozing in the uncomfortable hospital chair, refusing to leave despite William's protests. When William woke at 6 in the morning, disoriented and aching, Marcus was there. Morning, Marcus said, stretching. How you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. Marcus, you didn't have to stay. Yes, I did. Nobody should be alone in a hospital. Trust me, I know. William remembered Marcus telling him about his mother's stroke. The 5 days they'd spent in a hospital room, just like this one. Did you call your son? Marcus asked. William shook his head. I will. I just need to figure out what to say. How about the truth? David, I was in the emergency room last night. I had a cardiac episode. I need you to come home. That seems like a good start. He'll panic. Good. Maybe he should panic a little. Marcus leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. William, can I be real with you? Of course, your son calls every Sunday. That's good. That's nice. But calling isn't the same as showing up, and you need someone to show up right now. Not to send money or make phone calls, to actually be here.
present, helping you figure out how to live instead of just exist. He has his life, his company, and he has a father who almost died last night. Which one matters more? William closed his eyes. Marcus was right. He knew Marcus was right, but admitting it, asking for help, felt like failure. I'll call him, he said finally, after the doctor does rounds and tells me what happens next. Good. And William, we're not going anywhere either. You're stuck with us now. Despite everything, William smiled. I could think of worse fates. David Patterson's phone rang at 7:30 in the morning, Dallas time. He was in his home office, already on his second cup of coffee, reviewing contracts before his 8 o'clock meeting. When he saw his father's name on the caller ID, his stomach dropped. William never called this early. Something was wrong. Dad. David, I'm fine, before you panic, but I need to tell you something. William's voice sounded wrong, tired, strained. David's grip tightened on his phone. What happened? I had a cardiac episode last night. I'm in the hospital. It wasn't a heart attack, but the doctor says I'm at high risk if I don't make changes. High blood pressure, stress, poor self-care, the works. David felt the room tilt. What hospital? I'm coming. I'll be there by noon. David, you don't need to, Dad. David's voice came out sharper than he intended. He took a breath, tried again. I'm coming. We can argue about it after I get there. Which hospital? William told him. After they hung up, David sat for a moment, staring at nothing. His father had been in the emergency room, alone, and David hadn't even known, hadn't been there. He thought about the Sunday phone calls, the cheerful updates about golf and weather, and the neighbor's dog. William had been hiding his struggle, and David had let himself believe the performance. He called his assistant, and canceled everything for the next week. The Singapore investors would have to wait, the contracts would have to wait, everything would have to wait. His father couldn't. David drove fast, making the 3.5-hour trip to Austin in under 3 hours. He went straight to the hospital, not even stopping at his father's house first. He found William's room on the cardiac floor. His father was sitting up in bed, looking small and old in a way that made David's chest ache. There was an IV in his arm, monitors beeping steadily, and exhaustion etched in every line of his face. But he wasn't alone. A black man about David's age was sitting in the chair beside the bed, and they were talking. William was actually laughing at something the man had said. Dad. William looked up, and his face transformed. David, you came. Of course I came. David crossed the room, quickly, carefully hugging his father. William held on tight, and David felt him shaking. When they pulled apart, the other man stood up. You must be David, he said, extending his hand. I'm Marcus Thompson. I'm a friend of your father's. David shook his hand, noting the firm grip and the genuine warmth in Marcus's smile. Thompson, you're the family Dad told me about. From the park. That's us, Marcus confirmed. I was just keeping your dad company until you got here. I'll get out of your way now. Marcus, you don't have to leave, William protested. Your son just drove 3.5 hours. You two need time together. Marcus squeezed William's shoulder. I'll check in later, and remember what the doctor said about the medication schedule. After Marcus left, David pulled the chair closer to the bed. Dad, what happened? And don't give me the sanitized version. The truth. William took a deep breath, and told him everything. The loneliness since Catherine died, the isolation, the way he'd been barely eating, barely sleeping, just going through the motions, the panic attacks he'd been having, but hadn't mentioned, the crushing weight of grief that felt like it was physically squashing him. The doctor says my body basically shut down under the stress, William finished. If I don't make changes, real changes, I'm looking at a heart attack within the next few months. David felt anger and guilt warring in his chest, anger at his father for not telling him, guilt for not being present enough to see it himself. Why didn't you call me? He asked, trying to keep his voice level. Why didn't you tell me it was this bad? You're always so busy. I didn't want to burden you. Burden me. David stood up, pacing the small room. Dad, I'm your son. You're never a burden. How could you think that?
Because I see your life, David. The company, the deals, the constant travel. You built something incredible, and I'm proud of you. But I also see that you don't have room for much else, including me. The words hit David like a physical blow. That's not fair, isn't it? William's voice was gentle, not accusatory, just sad. When's the last time you visited? Not flew in for a funeral or a crisis, but actually visited, spent time together. David opened his mouth to answer and realized he couldn't remember. A year ago? Longer? I'm sorry, he said finally, sitting back down. You're right, I've been a terrible son. You're not terrible. You're busy. There's a difference. There shouldn't be. David took his father's hand. Dad, what's the plan? What do the doctors want you to do? Medication for the blood pressure, stress management, which apparently means therapy, better diet, regular exercise, social engagement. William smiled sadly. Basically everything I haven't been doing. Then we'll make sure you do it. I'll move back to Austin, or you can come to Dallas. We'll figure it out. David, no arguments. This is happening. You're my father, and I almost lost you. That's not happening again. William was quiet for a moment. What about your company? I'll figure it out. Promote my COO, work remotely, restructure. I don't care. None of it matters if you're not here. Your mother would say you're finally getting your priorities straight. David felt tears prick his eyes. She'd be right. They sat together in silence for a while. Then William spoke again. David, before you start making plans to uproot your life, I want you to meet the Thompsons properly. Come to Sunday dinner with me this weekend. See what they've given me. Then we can talk about next steps. Okay, David agreed. But Dad, I'm not leaving Austin until we have a solid plan in place. You're stuck with me for a while. I can think of worse fates, William said, echoing the words he'd spoken to Marcus earlier. William was released from the hospital on Friday afternoon with strict instructions about medication, diet, and follow-up appointments. David drove him home, shocked by how empty and lifeless the house felt. It was clean, almost obsessively so, but it felt like a museum, not a home. Everything perfectly in place, nothing lived in. David could see his mother's touches everywhere. Her throw pillows, her collection of owls, her reading chair by the window, but it was like the house was frozen in time, a shrine to someone who was gone. Dad, when's the last time you had friends over, or even turned on the TV? William looked around like he was seeing the place for the first time. I don't know, I just exist here. I don't really live here anymore. David felt something crack in his chest. They spent Friday and Saturday getting William settled, filling prescriptions, stocking the kitchen with actual food instead of frozen dinners. David worked from his laptop, handling the most urgent business but pushing everything else off. Sunday afternoon, they drove to the Thompson house together. David was nervous, though he couldn't quite say why. Maybe because these strangers had done for his father what he should have been doing. Maybe because he was about to see exactly how much he'd failed. The Dove Springs neighborhood surprised him, not in a bad way but in its ordinariness. Regular people living regular lives, kids playing basketball in driveways, families washing cars, the sound of music from open windows. The Thompson house was small but welcoming, yellow siding, flower boxes, a hand-painted sign on the door. Before William could even knock, the door flew open. Mr. William, you came. A little girl with cornrows and the biggest smile David had ever seen launched herself at William. Mama said you were feeling better and you were bringing your son, and I've been waiting all day. Hello, Riley, William said, his whole face lighting up in a way David hadn't seen in months. This is my son David. Riley turned her appraising gaze on David. She looked him up and down, taking in his expensive shirt and designer jeans. You look like Mr. William but younger, and more stressed out. Do you ever smile? Despite himself, David laughed. Sometimes you should smile more. It's good for you. That's what my mama says. She grabbed both their hands. Come on, dinner's almost ready. Inside the house was organized chaos. Marcus was in the kitchen attempting to mash potatoes while simultaneously trying to prevent something from boiling over. Denise was setting the table, giving instructions over her shoulder. Marcus turned down the heat on the green beans. William, David, welcome. Make yourselves at home. We're running a few minutes behind because somebody, she looked pointedly at her daughter, decided to reorganize the silverware drawer this afternoon. I was helping, Riley protested. You were helping in a way that made everything take longer, Marcus said, but he was grinning. David, good to finally meet you properly. Your dad's talked about you a lot. They shook hands, and David found himself immediately liking Marcus. There was no judgment in his eyes, just genuine warmth. "Thank you," David said, "for taking care of my dad when I wasn't here to do it." "We're glad we could," Marcus said simply. "He's good people." Over the next hour, as they cooked and talked and Riley gave David the full tour of the house including her room and her pet goldfish named Princess Sparkles, David watched his father, really watched him. William was different here, lighter. He joked with Marcus about the lumpy potatoes. He helped Denise carry dishes to the table. He let Riley show him her latest drawing and responded with genuine interest. He belonged here in a way he hadn't belonged anywhere since Catherine died. The dinner table was crowded but comfortable. The food was simple but delicious, and the conversation flowed easily, touching on everything from Riley's upcoming school play to Marcus's ongoing battle with the ancient heating system at the community center to Denise's book club's controversial selection of their next read. David found himself relaxing despite his initial awkwardness. The Thompsons didn't treat him like an outsider, or judge him for his absence. They included him naturally, asked him about his work, made him feel welcome. After dinner, while they were clearing plates, Riley tugged on David's sleeve. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." She led him to the living room where they could talk semi-privately. Her face was serious, more serious than a 7-year-old should be. "Are you going to take Mr. William away?" The question caught David off guard. "What do you mean?" "My daddy said maybe you would want Mr. William to move to Dallas to be close to you. Are you going to take him away from us?" David knelt down to Riley's level, looking at this remarkable child who'd somehow become so important to his father. "I don't know yet," he said honestly. "I want to make sure he's taken care of, that he's safe and healthy and not alone." "He's not alone here," Riley said, her voice fierce. "He has us. We love him. He comes to dinner every Sunday and reads to kids at the community center and makes Mrs. Patterson's cookies for everyone. He's our family now." David felt his throat tighten. "I can see that, and I'm grateful, more than you know." "Then why would you take him away?" "Because I'm his son, and I should be taking care of him." Riley considered this. "My Sunday school teacher says love isn't about keeping people close to you. It's about helping them be where they're happiest." "Where do you think Mr. William is happiest?" "Out of the mouths of babes." This 7-year-old had just articulated something David had been struggling with all weekend. "I think," David said slowly, "he's happier here than he's been in a long time." "Then maybe that's your answer." Later, as David and William drove back to William's house, they were both quiet. Finally David spoke. "I get it now." "Get what?" "Why you wanted me to meet them." "They're not just friends, Dad. They're family." "They are," William agreed. "They've given me a reason to keep going when I didn't have one. They see me, not as someone to be fixed or pitied but as someone who matters." David gripped the steering wheel tighter. "I should have been doing that. I should have been there. You're here now. That's what matters. Is it enough?" After months of neglect, William was quiet for a moment. "David, I'm going to tell you something your mother told me once. She said it's never too late to become the person you want to be. You can't change the past, but you can change what you do next." "What do I do next?" "That's not my decision to make. It's yours." David stayed in Austin for a week, much longer than he'd originally planned. He worked remotely, took calls from his father's house, and showed up for every doctor's appointment. He also spent time with the Thompsons. Coffee with Marcus on Tuesday morning, helping Denise organize supplies for an after-school program on Wednesday, reading with Riley's second-grade class on Thursday, where she introduced him to everyone as Mr. Williams' son who doesn't smile enough, but we're working on it. And slowly something shifted in David. He saw how Marcus worked 12-hour days at the community center but never missed Riley's bedtime. How Denise juggled multiple responsibilities but still made time for neighbors who needed help. How Riley, despite being only 7, had more emotional wisdom than most adults David knew. He saw what real community looked like. Not networking events or business dinners, but actual mutual care. People showing up for each other, not because they expected something in return, but because it was the right thing to do. One afternoon, he and Marcus were sitting on the Thompsons' back porch while Riley played in the yard. "Can I ask you something?" David said. "Sure." "Why did you help my dad?" "Really, you didn't know him. You owe him nothing. Why get involved?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching his daughter chase a butterfly. 3 years ago when my mama died I fell apart. I mean completely fell apart. Couldn't work, couldn't function, could barely take care of Riley. My brother came from Houston, stayed for 2 weeks, helped me get back on my feet. My wife's family brought meals for a month straight. The folks at the community center, they covered my shifts, gave me time, never made me feel like I was failing, even though I absolutely was. He turned to look at David. Those people saved my life. And when I asked my brother why he dropped everything to come help me, you know what he said? He said, because when we fall down, we need people to help us back up. And someday you'll get the chance to be that person for someone else. So helping my dad was paying it forward. It's more than that. It's recognizing that we're all one bad day away from needing help ourselves. Your dad, he was drowning. We threw him a lifeline, not because we're saints, but because we're human beings who see other human beings struggling. David nodded slowly. I make 7 figures a year, and I sent my father money every month thinking that was enough. You make a fraction of that, and you gave him something I couldn't. Presence, connection, a reason to keep going. Money can't buy what your dad needed. I'm starting to understand that. That evening David called his COO. Sarah, I need to talk to you about something. What's up? How would you feel about stepping up to CEO? There was a long pause. David, are you serious? Completely serious. I've been thinking about this for a while, but this week has made it clear. I've spent 20 years building Patterson Enterprises, and in the process, I've forgotten what I was building it for. My dad almost died, and I wasn't there. That can't happen again. What would you do? I'm not disappearing. I'd stay on as chairman, focus on strategy and big picture stuff, but day-to-day operations, that would be you. You've earned it, and honestly you'd probably be better at it than I am anyway. Let me think about it. Take your time. But Sarah, I'm done sacrificing relationships for business. I'm done arriving at success alone. After he hung up, David found his father in the living room, looking through photo albums. Dad, I need to talk to you about something. Okay, William set the album aside. I'm restructuring the company, promoting my COO to CEO, stepping back from day-to-day operations. William's eyes widened. David, you don't have to do that for me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me, because you were right. I've built this incredible career, and I'm successful by every conventional measure. But I'm 48 years old, I've never been married, I have no children, and I was so absorbed in work that I didn't notice my father was literally dying of loneliness. David sat down heavily. What's the point of all that success, if I end up alone? If I miss the people who actually matter? What will you do? I don't know yet. Figure out what comes next. Spend time with you. Maybe find a life outside of conference rooms and business deals. He paused. The Thompsons, they've shown me what I've been missing. Real connection. Community. The kind of wealth that doesn't show up on a balance sheet. William's eyes filled with tears. Your mother would be so proud of you right now. I think she'd say it's about time I woke up. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while. Then William spoke. I've been thinking too, about what comes next for me. Yeah, I don't want to move to Dallas, and I don't think you should move to Austin, at least not permanently. You have a life in Dallas, friends, a home, but maybe we can find a middle ground. Maybe I downsize to something more manageable here, closer to the Thompsons. Maybe you come visit more often, and I mean really visit, not just duty calls. I'd like that, David said. And Dad, I was thinking about something else too. What's that? The Thompsons, they helped you out of pure kindness. They wouldn't accept payment, wouldn't let me thank them with money. But Marcus said something about paying it forward, about being the person who helps others the way he was helped. Where are you going with this? What if we created something? A foundation maybe, in Mom's name. Something that helps families in crisis, medical emergencies, job loss, housing insecurity. The kind of situations that can spiral quickly and devastate people who don't have a financial cushion. William sat forward, interested. Keep talking. I've got resources, but I don't have what the Thompsons have. I don't know how to see people the way they do. I don't understand what families actually need, versus what makes donors feel good about themselves. David met his father's eyes. But they do. What if we partnered, used my money and their wisdom to actually help people? The Catherine Patterson Foundation, William said softly. She'd love that. So would you be interested in helping me figure out how to do this right? Yes, William said without hesitation. Yes, I would. David approached Marcus and Denise carefully. He'd learned his lesson about trying to pay them off. This had to be about genuine partnership, not charity or debt. He asked them to meet him for coffee, without Riley, without William, just the three of them. "I have a proposition for you," he said once they were settled. "And I need you to really hear me out before you say no." Marcus and Denise exchanged glances. "I want to start a foundation," David continued. "The Catherine Patterson Foundation, named after my mother. Its focus would be supporting families in crisis, medical emergencies, job loss, housing insecurity, the kind of situations that can devastate people quickly." "That's wonderful, David," Denise said. "Your mother would be honored. Here's the thing. I have money, I can fund this, but I don't have what you have. You see people really see them. You understand communities, you know what genuine help looks like. I need that. The foundation needs that." "What exactly are you asking?" Marcus said carefully. "I'm asking you to be advisors, paid positions, consulting work you can do on your own schedule. You wouldn't have to quit your jobs or upend your lives, but you'd help guide the foundation. Help me understand who needs help, and how to provide it effectively. Help me make sure this actually serves people instead of just making me feel better about my wealth." Denise looked at Marcus. "Another one of those wordless conversations. Why us?" Marcus asked. "Because when I tried to pay you for helping my dad, you said no. You told me to pay it forward instead. You live these values, and I'm still learning them. Because my mother taught elementary school for 35 years, and she believed in lifting people up. This foundation is how I honor her legacy, but I need help from people who understand what she understood." "Can we think about it?" Denise asked. "Absolutely. Take all the time you need. Just know that I'm serious about this, and I'm serious about doing it right." 3 days later Marcus called. "We're in. On one condition." "Name it." "Riley. We want her involved too in age-appropriate ways. We want her to grow up understanding that with privilege comes responsibility, that we help each other." David smiled. "I wouldn't have it any other way." Over the next 6 months they built something remarkable. David set up the foundation with a $2 million initial endowment. He'd planned to start with $1 million, but after liquidating some investments and restructuring his finances, he decided to go bigger. His mother deserved bigger. Marcus and Denise helped design the grant process. Simple applications, minimal documentation, no credit checks. Emergency grants ranging from $500 to $5,000, disbursed quickly. Trust-based philanthropy. William became the heart of the operation. He interviewed applicants, listened to their stories, saw himself in their struggles. Helping others helped him heal. Riley made cards for every grant recipient, hand-drawn pictures with messages like, "You've got this, and you're not alone." David had expensive cards printed by a designer, but families treasured Riley's crayon drawings more. The first grant went to a single mother whose car had broken down. She was at risk of losing her job because she couldn't get to work. $3,000 for repairs, and 2 weeks of rent while she got back on her feet. She cried when William called to tell her the grant was approved. "I don't understand," she said. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." "Because someone helped me when I needed it," William said. "And now it's my turn to help you." The second grant went to a family whose father had been hospitalized with appendicitis, no insurance, mounting bills, and 2 kids who needed school supplies. $4,000 to cover the medical expenses and get the children what they needed. The third grant went to an elderly veteran facing eviction. $1,500 for rent while the VA sorted out their disability benefits. Word spread through communities, not through advertising but through the organic network of people helping people. The foundation operated out of a small rented office with Marcus and Denise coming by a few evenings a week to review applications. David learned to step back, to provide resources but let the Thompsons guide the decision-making. It was harder than he'd expected, relinquishing control, but it was also freeing. He'd also made other changes. He came to Austin twice a month, spending long weekends with his father. They went to the community center together. They showed up for Riley's school play. They had Sunday dinners with the Thompsons. William had sold the big house, the one full of memories and emptiness. He'd moved into a smaller place in the Dove Springs neighborhood, 3 blocks from the Thompsons. It was a fresh start, but Catherine's presence was still there in the owl collection displayed in his new living room, in the reading chair by the window, in the photo albums he looked through on hard days. He still missed her. Some days the grief was crushing, but other days he could remember her with joy instead of just pain, could tell stories about her and laugh, could honor her by living instead of just existing. David, for his part, was discovering what life looked like beyond the office. He'd started dating someone, a teacher he'd met through the foundation. He was learning to say no to business opportunities that would consume all his time. He was building a life, not just a career. One Saturday afternoon, nearly a year after that first Thanksgiving, the foundation held a gathering. Every person they'd helped was invited to a potluck at the community center. About 60 people showed up. Single parents, elderly folks, families who'd been one crisis away from catastrophe. The room buzzed with conversation and laughter. David stood to speak but found himself overwhelmed. Marcus squeezed his shoulder and took over. "We started this foundation because someone helped someone in need," Marcus said. "That person was William Patterson, and the people who helped were my family. We didn't know then what it would lead to. We just knew someone needed a meal and some company on Thanksgiving." He looked around the room. "Every person here has a story. A moment when you didn't know where help would come from. And now you're here, you made it through. Some of you with our help, all of you with your own strength and determination." Denise stood beside her husband. "This foundation isn't just about grants. It's about remembering that we're all connected, that we all struggle, that we all need help sometimes, and that when we help each other we create ripples that spread farther than we can imagine." Riley, now 8 years old, tugged on her mother's sleeve. Denise lifted her up so everyone could see her. "I want to say something." The room went quiet. "My grandma Ruth used to say that being alone with sad thoughts is like being in a dark room. People help turn on the lights. That's what this foundation does. It helps turn on lights. And when your light is on, you can help turn on someone else's light. That's how it works. We're all light switchers." The room erupted in applause. People mingled, sharing stories. A single father talked about how a grant had kept his family from being evicted, and now he was volunteering at a homeless shelter. An elderly woman explained how medical bill assistance had allowed her to keep her medication, and she was now mentoring young people in her church. The ripples were spreading. David found himself standing next to his father, watching the gathering with quiet satisfaction. "Mom would be proud," he said. "She'd be proud of you," William corrected. "You took something beautiful and painful and turned it into something that helps people. That's legacy, son. I couldn't have done it without you, without the Thompsons." "That's the point though, isn't it? We need each other, all of us." Across the room, Riley was showing her hand-drawn cards to a little boy whose family had received a grant last month. Marcus was introducing 2 families to each other, both of whom had children the same age. Denise was talking with a young woman about job training resources. This was the legacy, not the dollar amounts or the tax benefits, but this: people connecting, supporting each other, building community. David had learned that wealth without wisdom was just numbers, but wealth guided by compassion, by people who understood struggle, by a 7-year-old's conviction that everyone deserved light in their darkness, that was transformative. The Catherine Patterson Foundation would help hundreds of families over the coming years, but its real gift was simpler and more profound. It reminded people that they weren't alone, that crisis didn't have to mean catastrophe, that someone saw them, valued them, believed in their inherent worth. All because a black family with barely enough to cover their own bills had seen an elderly white man crying on a bench and decided that kindness mattered more than convenience, had invited him to Thanksgiving dinner and treated him like family, had refused payment because some things can't and shouldn't be bought. They'd taught a wealthy businessman that the best investment wasn't in property or stocks, but in people. That showing up mattered more than sending checks. That presence was the greatest present. And they'd proven that family isn't just blood, it's choice. It's the people who see you at your worst and sit beside you anyway. It's a little girl who offers kindness to strangers. It's a father who stays all night in a hospital. It's a mother who always sets extra places at the table. As the gathering wound down, Riley ran up to William with one of her cards. This one showed a sun with rays spreading out in all directions. Around each ray she'd written names: Marcus, Denise, Riley, William, David, Catherine, and dozens of others, people the foundation had helped, people who'd helped others in turn. "Look, Mr. William, we're all connected. All these people, They're all light rays from the same sun. William knelt down and hugged this remarkable child who'd first seen him crying on a bench and decided he needed comfort. You're absolutely right, Riley. We're all connected, all part of the same light. David watched them, his heart full. He'd started this journey thinking he needed to thank the Thompsons with money. He'd ended it understanding that the real gift was learning how to see people the way they did, how to show up, how to be present, how to love without expecting anything in return. The Catherine Patterson Foundation wasn't just his mother's legacy, it was the Thompson family's too. It was Riley's conviction that people matter. It was Marcus's willingness to stay with a stranger in crisis. It was Denise's open door and generous spirit. It was the belief that kindness isn't transactional, it's transformational. And it all started because a 7-year-old girl saw a crying stranger in a park and asked her parents if they could help. Sometimes the smallest acts of love create the biggest ripples of good. 3 years later, the foundation had helped over 500 families. But more than that, it had created a network of care. People who'd been helped often came back to volunteer, to donate what they could, to pay it forward in their own way. William, now 78, was healthier than he'd been in years, still missing Catherine every day but living again instead of just existing. He'd started a grief support group at the community center helping others navigate loss. David had made permanent changes. He lived in Austin now, in a modest condo near his father. He still ran Patterson Enterprises, but as chairman, not CEO. He had time for relationships, for community involvement, for Sunday dinners that never got canceled. Marcus and Denise had used their consulting fees to finally take Riley on the trip to Disney World she'd been dreaming about. They'd also started a college fund for her. Riley, now 10 years old, had announced she wanted to run a non-profit when she grew up, like the foundation but for animals, because they need light switchers too. On Thanksgiving that year, they all gathered at the community center for a massive potluck. Not just the Thompson family and William and David, but dozens of families touched by the foundation. The room overflowed with food and laughter and connection. Before they ate, William stood to speak. His voice was strong, steady. 4 years ago I was sitting on a bench in Zilker Park, completely lost. My wife had died, and I didn't know how to go on. I thought maybe I'd just quietly fade away and nobody would notice or care. He looked at the Thompson family. Then a 7-year-old girl saw me crying and decided I needed help. She and her parents, they had every reason to keep walking. But they stopped. They invited me into their lives. They treated me with kindness I hadn't earned, and generosity I couldn't repay. William's voice grew thick with emotion. That kindness saved my life, literally. And it started something bigger than any of us imagined. The Catherine Patterson Foundation exists because the Thompson family taught me that helping others is how we heal ourselves. That we're all connected. That small acts of love create ripples that never stop spreading. He raised his glass. So here's to Riley, who taught us about light switchers. To Marcus and Denise, who showed us what real community looks like. To my son David, who finally figured out what actually matters. To Catherine, whose memory inspires us to be better. And to everyone in this room, all of you are proof that kindness is never wasted. That people matter more than anything else. That we're all just walking each other home. Cheers, everyone echoed. Glasses raised. Riley climbed onto her chair so she could see everyone. And remember, she announced with the confidence of a 10-year-old who'd figured out the secret to life, we're all light switchers, every single one of us, so keep switching those lights. Laughter and applause filled the room. As they ate and talked and celebrated, David looked around at this chosen family, this community built on kindness and sustained by care. He thought about the man he'd been 4 years ago, isolated, success-obsessed, measuring worth in dollars and deals. That man had been rich but poor in the ways that mattered. This man, the one he was becoming, had learned that true wealth was measured in connections and community. In Sunday dinners and hospital vigils. In hand-drawn cards and late-night conversations. In showing up again and again for the people who matter. He caught his father's eye across the room. William was laughing at something Riley had said, looking more alive than David had seen him in years. All because they'd stopped. Because when faced with a crying stranger on a bench, the Thompson family had chosen kindness over convenience, had seen a human being in pain, and decided that mattered more than their own plans. That choice had saved William's life. And in saving William, it had transformed David's. It had created a foundation that would help thousands. It had built a community that would sustain them all from one simple question asked by a 7-year-old girl to a crying stranger: "Are you sad because someone you love went to heaven?" If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. We all know someone who's struggling, someone who's lost, someone sitting on a bench wondering if anyone sees them. Be the person who stops, be the person who asks if they're okay, be the light switcher. And if you're the person on the bench right now, hold on. Your Riley might be right around the corner. Your community is coming. You're not alone even when it feels like you are. Thank you for staying with me through this story. See you in the next one.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.